The reliance on user acquisition ads has only grown in the last few years. But the more user acquisition ads you see, as a consumer, you can also intuitively think, the more I don't want to be in that game.
Question is their data hygiene and
Yeah.
what they pass and what they do. That has to change. What does that need to look like?
In my mind, the best example that has made even the game developers think about that is when Airbnb completely shut off their performance marketing dollars. That brand recall at a really key moment when I am anyway waiting for the game to open up, I think is huge value that we have not tapped yet.
This will be a milestone year. And Kunal, a pleasure that we could chat about this. This is Mobile Groove, and I'm always taking the opportunity to catch up with people I've either spoken to before or speaking for the first time. They're both great. In this case, Kunal, we have connected.
Yes.
It was at Demexco a few years back.
Yep.
Since then, the industry has moved on. We're in 2025, which is obvious. But feel what you're... What's the feel? What are you feeling? What are you thinking about going into 2025? Most people are optimistic. What camp are you in?
I think we are definitely optimistic. I think the industry's gone through a bit of a, trough and a valley sort of a situation in the last couple of years. But this year, I feel like people are getting a lot more thoughtful. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more stability in the ecosystem, whether it is on the platform side or, thinking about which games should come out. So we're definitely seeing a lot more optimism this year.
So one thing I'm also seeing is I'm talking to a lot of admon people, marketers, and I ask them and I say, okay, it's New Year. What would you like that you haven't had? What would you think would be really helpful? And it's interesting. Common thread through all of the interviews is we wish we knew more about what works, right?
Right.
The appetite for experimenting, understandably, a little bit over the top as far as wanting to really spend to figure it out. And they say that, a company like InMobi, you have those insights. So I thought, great, you do indeed. So share some of those insights. What are you seeing that works? Or maybe what should they be doing differently that works?
Yeah, I think that probably would be a core theme for 2025, right? If you think about it. For the longest time, platforms have worked with publishers in, I would say, quite transparently in a transactional manner, right? We're here to provide a service. We'll do it really well. We'll take care of you, but it's still transactional. Mm-hmm. I think that's changing, where publishers are saying, like you have also heard, we want to get better, reduce volatility in our life. You are seeing things, tell us what they are, right? And to that effect, we've been having conversations around two areas. One is, let's have a symbiotic relationship where we can get access to data about your users. We will in turn use that data to help you improve your user engagement, right? By that I mean the reliance on user acquisition ads has only grown in the last few years. Mm-hmm. But the more user acquisition ads you see, as a consumer, you can also intuitively think, the more I don't want to be in that game. There's only so many ads you can see which are like, download this game, download that.
True.
And so when user engagement falls, user churn increases. So as an app developer, as a gaming developer, I'm now even more worried, wait a minute, now I have to fill at least that hole and go for user acquisition dollars. And it becomes like a spiral because the user acquisition ads are really high value of dollars for them.
Yeah.
But they also end up reducing their user base, which then they have to replenish, right? And we're saying, look, if you think of your users, if you share more signals with us, we will help you figure out how do we improve user engagement so you can get out of this sort of spiral. Mm-hmm. And those signals don't have to be revolutionary. You already have access to them. But we've never been able to have this relationship before where we could package them into what we see across the portfolio. So it's not about you as one app developer, it's about the portfolio and here's what we can feed, right? Mm-hmm. The other aspect of that is the user insights that we can see are global in nature. And we can help publishers plan their app, the new game development as an idea, for example, right? Hey, look, we are seeing that in Japan, these kind of games are working better. As a studio with 10 titles, here's what you could think of. Now that's very like macro strategy level. But then you go, sort of micro level. You could absolutely tell them, here are the kind of users who are sticking the longest with you, because we are seeing their length of their engagement, which as an app developer, honestly, you also see it. But sometimes when you hear from somebody else,
Yeah.
it sort of validates. Otherwise, sort of you're stuck in your own echo chamber, right?
But it's great that you can see that in there because we're not hearing that enough. I think it was more about, well, what is the platform seeing and why don't we know more about it? When really what it is also a discussion that has to go
Yeah.
on about what data to pass. And that's interesting because the publishers themselves, sometimes when I'm interviewing them, are saying, well, what do you think? I don't think they understand entirely the data the question around the data that is most important. Maybe you can give some guidance to that because I think this year they're very open,
Yeah.
more open than before to discussing it. Question is their data hygiene and
Yeah.
what they pass and what they do. That has to change. What does
For
that need to
sure.
look like?
I think, look, at the core of it all remains the central theme. We want to respect the privacy of the user. So we're not talking about, hey, give me, their physical address or give me their, unhashed email. We're not talking about that. All we're saying is, as a app developer, you can see your user across your portfolio, but also now go into depth. In each game, you know how many times they play the game in a day, in a week, in a month, which games they play, you know, are they purchasing something within the app if you have an in-app purchase or not? All of those signals are not necessarily exposed. If you expose them, we can make it work out better for you of how that user, not just with you, but maybe at some other studio, works out.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not going to violate my relationship with some other studio by revealing them, but even that anonymized information helps you improve your relationship with the user.
And you get a pattern that emerges.
100%. Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about the global reach and what you're able to see. Not putting you on the spot here, Kunal, but I am thinking, it would be great to have some idea of the low-hanging fruit or the things that we skip over because now everything matters. Incremental is important. Percentage points matter. So is there something, for example, that you're seeing in certain regions that you're maybe not seeing all of the publishers really understand? Maybe there's new ad formats or new behaviors that you're seeing globally that publishers at events maybe in the Western world just aren't picking up on.
Yeah, there's actually a great example. We were just having this conversation about an hour ago, and this came out of China from like 8 years ago.
Okay.
In China, people were used to then, as they're even now, used to seeing an ad when they open the app. So before the app loads, they would see an ad.
Okay.
Now, it came out of a constraint where bandwidth was tight, so the app took time to load
Okay.
up. So you had time. You had 5-7 seconds, and you could show an ad then
Right.
that helped the app developer without disturbing the user engagement because they were just waiting on the screen anyway, right?
It's a learned behavior. They
Right.
already do it. Yeah.
Now, 8 years ago, we tried to bring that concept out. Southeast Asia embraced it, but all of US, Western Europe were like, not for us. It's terrible. Why? Because they didn't have a bandwidth constraint. And I get it.
Okay.
Fast forward 8 years, bandwidth is not a constraint, but your device can only hold so many games, and the device memory is making games load up slower. Games are getting bigger, busier, heavier. So now they're taking the same 5-7 seconds to load up. So when we say, hey, this is 5-7 seconds, A, wasted real estate, B, no impact on user engagement, you should consider these ads. It's very slowly turning the wheels here, right? Because people are like, wait a minute, maybe I should consider this.
Yeah.
And we've had one studio who picked it up and immediately, no impact to user engagement, but revenue goes up, right? So that's the kind of thing that we are helping them understand. It's not new. The reasons for the app loading may be different, but the concept remains the same, right?
And that makes sense because when you start into a game, you want to see something happening. So if nothing is happening,
Yeah.
and you do have my attention, then it can be an ad. And then the other point that you made is it doesn't have to be that UA only ad.
Yeah.
Why would I say download a game? You just did, and you're downloading and it's loading.
Yeah.
So there's also a little bit more, I think, in the mindset of what an ad needs to be. I mean, are you seeing different ways of messaging that are maybe the evolution of UA ads? Are we seeing, for example, yeah, retention focused ads, churn prevention ads, telling the story. We all heard it. Games need to be brands, so maybe there needs to be game branding ads.
And I think that's very underserved as a topic. Games have their own pull at a certain stage, right?
Yeah.
In my mind, the best example that has made even the game developers think about that is when Airbnb completely shut off their performance marketing dollars. That was 2 years ago. And they moved 100% to brand marketing. That uplift that they got in their brand awareness actually made people download their ad anyway. Right? It's the old point. There's no such thing as performance marketing alone. You have to always think brand and performance together. So in this, if you take the same example, you have 5 seconds of real estate when you open the app. Do I really want to only make you download something? Or can I, as the studio, who may have 10 different titles, give you a house ad which just tells you about my different apps?
Yes.
Right? That brand recall at a really key moment when I am anyway waiting for the game to open up, I think is huge value that we have not tapped yet.
And probably what we're going to be seeing more and more of, because more and more companies, even in the mid-size, are saying, we need to build a brand. I had Original Games on my panel. We don't have a brand. We're going to build one.
Yeah.
She's in charge of building that. Let's leave with that thought, because you have a unique perspective in that you understand also the brand mindset, what they're looking for, and trying to, again, bring those two worlds together. But they're moving more closely together
100%.
Because that's the way it is.
Like you said, every percent matters, right?
Every percent matters. So is there something that you can leave us with about making brand performance or brand formance the focus and those ecosystems as well? Because you're seeing both sides.
I think maybe I'll divide it into 2 parts. The first is house ads are generally the least, let's say, invested part of any company that has multitude of titles, whether gaming or non-gaming. If they can work with us and reimagine that, I think that's your best opportunity in the lowest cost environment to improve brand recall. The second is, we can see, because of our portfolio depth and breadth, when you have the right brand ad campaign and the performance ad campaign run together, your organic downloads actually increase when you versus only running a performance campaign. A lot of studios don't want to necessarily invest in that because that's not natural. To gaming developers, it's not natural to have a brand as a concept, right?
Yeah, but that's changing.
But when you do that, you start separating yourself from the many others who are just more or less replicating titles at this point.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's a conversation that may not be intuitive, but the time has come now.
I like that, because we end on the idea that the conversation will be continued. This will be a milestone year. And Kunal, a pleasure that we could chat about this. And I want to have you back to hear what you're hearing about in the future. 100%. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And of course, if you're tuning into In the Groove on YouTube, well, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It will allow you to stay up to date with the series. And not only that, enjoy the pure gold of knowledge and insights our guests bring to every episode.